Good evening, everybody. This is Pastor Daniel from Lighthouse. It's my privilege and honor to bring to you a life-giving message. We're going to pick up in part 3 of Living Life on Purpose. We've been looking at the person of Nehemiah to see how Nehemiah rebuilt the wall. And he had a purpose, and his life was lived on purpose. And so we've been looking at Nehemiah to see how he lived his life on purpose. So the first week we talked about the stirring. What is your purpose? What is my purpose? How do you define that? How do you sense that? What do you do with the stirring of God in you? And how do you come from a place of stirring to a place of movement, to a place of vision? And so last week we talked about vision. We talked about how to get to a place of vision clarity. That's more of a process. It's not Jehovah Zappa, my vision. It's more of a process that you and I go through. And Nehemiah went on this process of clarifying the vision that God had given him in his life. And he got to a place of vision clarity. Rebuild the wall. And so if you can't define it, you can't do it. And so we talked about getting to a place of vision clarity and how that brings freedom in your life. You're able to say yes to things that you know come alongside of your vision. You're able to say no to things that you know that you're not supposed to be involved in. So vision clarity is really, really important. I would suggest to you that you can't live a life on purpose without vision clarity. And so last week we talked about vision clarity, how we needed to seek God faithfully. We need to pray first. We need to pray often. We need to pray big. That if your vision doesn't cause you to say, hey, I need God on my side to accomplish this vision, then I would suggest that your vision is too small. And so let's have a vision that we need to pray into, and pray first, pray often, and pray big. And Nehemiah had a vision that was big, and he needed God to come alongside of him, because Nehemiah was just an ordinary man that did extraordinary things. He was a person not of position, but he was a person of passion. He was a person that identified a need that needed to be accomplished because he had a burden for his people. And so he did what no one else could do. He wasn't a construction worker. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a priest. He wasn't a pastor. He was a cupbearer to the king that had a passion to rebuild the wall. And he did something extraordinary. And we can learn so much from the life of Nehemiah. And so we're going to learn part 3. We're going to talk about planning carefully. We're going to talk about planning carefully. Now listen to me. I lost some of you right there because you're like, oh, Pastor Daniel, I'm not a planner. I'm horrible at planning. Well, this is how you grow. You grow by learning how to plan. And now some of you are talented with planning, and I want to suggest to you, thank you. I thank you for your ability to plan well. And so what I want to do is I want to look at the life of Nehemiah and to see how he planned carefully. Because listen to me, in order for your vision to come about, you're going to have to plan very, very carefully. And so I want to give you a few insights tonight about the life of Nehemiah on how to plan carefully. So I'm going to read a portion of scripture, and then we're going to make some points on planning. I'm going to read in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 6 through 8. You can either turn there or listen very carefully. Then the king, with the queen sitting behind him, asked me, how long will your journey take? And when will you get back? If it pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive at Judah. And may I have a letter to the keeper of the royal park so that he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple and for the city wall and for the residence I will occupy. Now fast forward to verse 11 in chapter 2. I went to Jerusalem, and after staying 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except for the one I was riding on. So we're going to look at those very few passages and see how Nehemiah planned carefully. The first thing that Nehemiah did was he set a time. He set a time. A vision without a plan is a dream. A vision without a plan is a dream. You can say to me that I'm not good at planning, but I want to suggest to you that without a plan, your vision is going to fail every time. Now, so how do we plan? The first step in planning is to set a time. Nehemiah set a time. Get specific about what you're going to accomplish and set a time, something that's measurable. Like for instance, I started these teachings 5 or 6 weeks ago, and my time is 15 minutes. The vision I have for these teachings is I want to give one specific or two specific thoughts in a very short amount of time that you can then take and apply to your life so that you can grow closer to the Lord. Okay, so 15 minutes is my time. Well, I want to tell you tonight that I have yet to hit 15 minutes. It's 20 minutes and 45 seconds. The lowest I've gotten is 17 minutes and 20 something seconds. And so, but I'm trying to set a time. There's something measurable that I'm trying to get to. Now I'm failing right now, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to hit it one of these times. I'm going to give a clear and concise message in 15 minutes that you can apply to your life. So it needs to be specific. There needs to be a time associated with it. All right. And so Nehemiah set a time. The second thing that he did when he planned carefully is he secured protection and provision. Did you catch that in his statement? He says, may I have letters so that they will provide me safe conduct. And then he said, can I get a letter to the royal park so they can give me timber to rebuild the wall? Nehemiah secured protection and provision. Oh, don't let this pass you by. A vision without resource is risky. It's not sustainable. And so we need to look at our vision and we need to say, okay, where's the protection and the provision? Where's the resource going to come from? Now, whatever your vision is, it's going to vary. It might not necessarily be money, but I've seen many businesses that had a vision, but they didn't have protection or resource, and they failed every time. Where did they fail at? They failed at the planning carefully. How is this sustainable? Anything that I add to my life, I think very carefully about nowadays. And I think about, how is this sustainable? Where's my protection? Where's my resource? Is this something that I can sustain? And so Nehemiah, he needs to build the wall. And the first thing that he secures is protection from the king and resource from the king. One of the great things, I love the story of Nehemiah, if you can tell, is that we have both of those provided for us in King Jesus. He's our protector and he's our provider. And so when you have a God-sized vision, you can then lean on King Jesus because he provides you that protection and you have resource from the kingdom of heaven. And so that should be something that inspires faith in your life. And it causes you to pray, pray first, pray often, and pray big. And so Nehemiah had both of those things. And the next thing that Nehemiah did was that he built a team. A plan without a team is self-centered. A plan without a team is self-centered. Does your vision require you to have people on your team that are different than you? Because I want to suggest to you that a God-sized vision is going to require that your team be diverse. Your team have different gifts and different giftings and talents. And I'm not saying that your plan won't succeed if it's self-centered. I'm saying that a God-sized vision and a God-sized plan, carefully planned out, needs to have people associated with them. And Nehemiah built a team. Look, in verse 11, he said, I went to Jerusalem and staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. He had built a team. And the next point is this: careful, people are listening. Careful, people are listening. Listen, a plan released too early invites trouble. A plan released too early invites trouble. What do you mean by that, Pastor Daniel. Here's what I need. Here's what I mean by that. You need to spend a significant amount of time planning things out as far as you possibly can with the team that God has given you. And you need to keep that plan secure and not release it. And this is what Nehemiah does. He says this. He says, I hadn't told anyone what God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except for the one I was riding on. Nehemiah had not released the plan yet. He was holding on to the plan. And Nehemiah does something which I think is so phenomenal, is he begins to spy the land. If you pick this up with me in verse 13, he says, by night I went out through the valley gate towards Jacal well, and at the dung gate he examined the wall of Jerusalem that had been destroyed by fire. He then moved on to another gate and another gate and another gate. Nehemiah had his team, and then he went out and spied the land. The greatest plans emerged from the field. Listen to me. Different perspective changes everything, and it then gives you the substance behind the plan that you're going to need. I love to play golf. I love to play golf. And one of the things that I love about golf is that when I hit a shot and it lands somewhere, depending on where I'm looking at that shot, say I'm in the bunker and I'm looking from the green, and if you don't play golf, then you need to watch some golf, and this might not make sense to you, but hang with me. If I hit the ball in the bunker and I'm standing in the green and I look at that ball in the bunker, I have one perspective. But if I go around and I look at that golf ball from a different perspective, it then begins to frame the plan of execution in my mind. I'm like, okay, I've seen this thing from several levels and several different perspectives. And that's what Nehemiah does. Nehemiah goes out and he spies the land. He's going to the place where he's going to rebuild the wall in the night when nobody's watching, and he's going through there and he's like, okay, I see what needs to be done there. I see what needs to be done there. And it doesn't say it in the text, but I'm pretty sure Nehemiah's talking to his team saying, well, what do you think about this? What's our plan of execution on this? And so Nehemiah is planning real carefully for the vision that he's about to convey to the people. And so I want to talk to you about that now, that he inspired people passionately. And so here, let me go through these things on this plan very quickly. Set a time, secure protection and provision, build a team. Be careful. Don't release your plan because there are people listening to you. I can't wait to preach next week's message about get ready to fight, because here's the deal. When you're trying to accomplish a vision that God has in store for your life, you got to get ready for the fight, because we have an enemy that's ready to steal and kill and destroy the plans and dreams that we have in our lives. And so I want to talk to you about that next week. So tune in next week. It's the whole reason why I talked about the whole reason why I did this series is for next week's teaching. And so he planned very carefully, and then he spied the land. I love the power. I talked to it last week. The power in the pause, the power of getting on the ground. The greatest plans happen on the field. I mean, if you've taken missions trips, you've probably experienced that. You have something planned that you think is going to work in another country. You get over there and your plans change. And the greatest plans come from having a great team and then adjusting your plan to execute it. And I want to draw your attention, and I'll finish real quickly. Let me check my time. I don't know. See, I got 1 minute left. Nehemiah inspired people passionately. So I'll finish with this and see if I can get under 20 minutes this evening. In verse number 17, 18, he says this, then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of God on me and what the king had said to me. Nehemiah spies out the land, makes this careful planning, and then he unveils the vision that God has for rebuilding the wall, and he inspired his people passionately. I want to draw your attention to a few things about inspiring people passionately. I think our calling means too much. Our life is too short and our calling is too great to not be inspired. Now listen to me. You might be listening to me tonight and you're saying, Pastor Daniel, you don't inspire me. I will give you permission right now to stop listening to me. Follow people, listen to people that inspire you, because your calling is too great and your life is too short not to live your life inspired. And when I'm talking about inspiring people passionately, I'm not talking about fluff. Nehemiah inspires people to build a wall, and he challenges them. He challenges them. Listen to his challenge. He says, you see the trouble we're in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and the gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. Nehemiah presents the current reality. The wall is broken, but notice his tone, and I'll finish with these thoughts. His tones are we, not you. He didn't browbeat them. He said, we can do this. You see, what Nehemiah was a servant leader. He was looking to serve the purpose and the vision that God has instilled in his life, and he was willing to do the work. He was willing to come alongside his people that he loved to build the wall, and he didn't browbeat them. He said, look, here's the current reality. We have a problem, folks, but let's do this together. He inspired with faith and favor and purpose. I love it. At the very end of his vision statement, as he's trying to get people to join the wall, he said, I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. He's saying we're doing this with the favor of God on our life. He has been favorable in every aspect of this plan, and the king is on board, and he's provided protection and provision. We can do this. And so Nehemiah inspires, and we'll get into this later on in this story of Nehemiah. He does something amazing. He rebuilds the wall in a very short amount of time, but he does it not by browbeating people. He does it by inspiring them passionately to come alongside of this God-given purpose and vision to rebuild the wall. I'm going to end there. Hopefully I end in less than 20 minutes. Let me pray for you. Lord, I come to you tonight, and Lord, I know and I understand the importance of careful planning. And Lord, I pray for each and every person listening to this message, Lord, that we would take the simple steps on planning carefully so that we can see the fruit of God in our visions, Lord, that we would see the 100 and the 60 and the 30-fold from our lives because we took the time to think critically, to think strategically, and plan from a place of wisdom. We slowed down before we sped up. And Lord, I pray for that this evening in Jesus' mighty name. It was so great to talk to you. I miss you guys so much. God bless you and have a great day.